Biker ripped a simple woman's shirt, the Marine Corps tattoo froze the whole bar. The jukebox rattled out an old country tune as the small-town bar buzzed with Friday night chatter. It wasn't fancy, just a worn-out place with creaky floors, neon beer signs, and the kind of smell that only comes from years of spilled whiskey and fried food. At the corner booth sat Emma, a quiet woman in her mid-40s. She was dressed simply, faded jeans, a cotton blouse, and the kind of weary smile worn by someone who had spent her life working hard and asking for little. Emma wasn't there to party. She'd stopped by on her way home from the late shift at the diner, hoping for a quick sandwich and maybe a few minutes of quiet before heading back to her empty house. Life hadn't been easy for her. Widowed young, she'd raised 2 children alone, both now grown and serving in the military. She carried her pride for them like a hidden medal pinned close to her heart, even though she rarely spoke of it. The bar door swung open, and a group of bikers stomped in, leather vests shining with patches, boots thudding like warning drums. Their presence filled the room with an edgy silence. Most folks looked down at their drinks, hoping not to catch the wrong eye. Emma did the same, until one of them, tall and broad with tattoos crawling up his neck, noticed her. "Hey, sweetheart," he drawled, swaggering over. Emma kept her gaze steady on her sandwich. She had no interest in conversation. But the man didn't take the hint. He leaned in, close enough for her to smell the whiskey on his breath. "What's a pretty little thing like you doin' here all alone?" Before she could answer, he reached out and tugged at her blouse, as if trying to tease a reaction. But the fabric, old and thin, ripped under his grip with an awful tearing sound. Gasps broke around the bar. Emma froze, her face burning with humiliation as she clutched the torn shirt to her chest. And then the room went silent. The reason wasn't Emma's tears or the biker's cruel grin, it was what the torn blouse had revealed. Ink stretched across Emma's shoulder and upper arm, a bold Marine Corps tattoo, weathered with time but unmistakable. It wasn't flashy or decorative. It was raw, permanent, and carried with it the weight of sacrifice. The biker's smirk faltered. He blinked, taken aback. Emma's eyes lifted, and for the first time, she met his gaze. "That," she said quietly, steady as steel, "belonged to my husband. He wore the uniform, fought for this country, and never made it back home. I got this tattoo because I promised our kids I'd carry his memory for both of us." The bar held its breath. The biker's hand dropped to his side. For a long moment, he just stared at her, and in his eyes flickered something unexpected, shame. The rough edge of bravado crumbled. Behind him, his friends shifted uncomfortably, suddenly less menacing than they had when they walked in. Emma's blouse still hung in tatters, but her posture had changed. She was no longer just the weary woman eating alone at the bar, she was a pillar, a reminder of every mother, wife, and daughter who had borne the weight of service and sacrifice. And then, from the back of the bar, an old man in a trucker hat stood up. He raised his glass. "To the Corps," he said. His voice cracked, but it rang clear. Others followed, first a whisper, then a chorus. "To the Corps. To the fallen. To the families." Glasses clinked, voices rose, and suddenly Emma was surrounded not by pity, but by reverence. The biker cleared his throat, visibly struggling. He pulled a bandana from his pocket and handed it to her, awkward and clumsy, but sincere. "Ma'am. I'm sorry. I didn't know." His words were quiet, but they carried weight. Emma took the bandana, tying it across her shoulder to cover the tear. She gave him a small nod. "Sometimes we forget what we don't see," she said softly. The tension in the room dissolved, replaced by something far more powerful, unity. For that brief moment, everyone, farmers, bikers, bartenders, and strangers, was connected by shared respect. Not just for Emma's husband, but for every sacrifice stitched into the fabric of the country. The biker and his crew left soon after, subdued and silent. Emma stayed a little longer, finishing her sandwich in peace. But the atmosphere around her had shifted. People stopped by her booth, some to thank her, others just to offer a kind smile. The bartender insisted her meal was on the house. When Emma finally stood to leave, the whole bar rose with her, as if escorting her out with invisible honor guards. She walked into the night not as the quiet, tired woman she'd been when she entered, but as a living reminder of resilience and dignity. Driving home, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, not loneliness, not weariness, but warmth. Her husband's memory wasn't just hers to carry anymore. That night, in a little bar filled with strangers, she realized it belonged to all of them. And perhaps that was the true strength of sacrifice, not just in battle, but in the way it calls others to kindness, to reflection, to compassion. Because sometimes, all it takes is a torn shirt to reveal the kind of truth that can unite a room, soften a hardened heart, and remind us that beneath the noise and the anger, humanity is still there, waiting to rise.